You clicked because the podcast said Azure AI Foundry is a trap, right? Good, you're in the right place. Here's the promise up front. Copilots collapse without grounding, but tools like Retrieval Augmented Generation, RAG, with Azure AI Search, Hybrid, and Semantic, plus evaluators for groundedness, relevance, and coherence are the actual fixes that keep you from shipping hallucinations disguised as answers. We'll cut past the marketing decks and show you the survival playbook with real examples from the field. Subscribe to the M365 show newsletter and follow the live streams with MVPs. Those are where the scars and the fixes live. And since the first cracks usually show up in multimodal apps, let's start there. Why multimodal apps fail in the real world? When you see a multimodal demo on stage, it looks flawless. The presenter throws in a text prompt, a clean image, maybe even a quick voice input, and the model delivers a perfect chart or a sharp contract summary. It all feels like magic. But the moment you try the same thing inside a real company, the shine rubs off fast. Demos run on pristine inputs. Workplaces run on junk. That's the real split. In production, nobody is giving your model carefully staged screenshots or CSVs formatted by a standards committee. HR is feeding it smudged government IDs. Procurement is dragging in PDFs that are on their 5th fax generation. Someone in finance is snapping a photo of an invoice with a cracked Android camera. Multimodal models can handle text, images, voice, and video, but they need well-indexed data and retrieval to perform under messy conditions. Otherwise, you're just asking the model to improvise on garbage. And no amount of GPU spent fixes garbage in, garbage out. This is where Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG, is supposed to save you. Plain English, the model doesn't know your business, so you hook it to a knowledge source. It retrieves a slice of data and shapes the answer around it. When the match is sharp, you get useful, grounded answers. When it's sloppy, the model freestyles, spitting out confident nonsense. And that's how you end up with a chatbot swearing your company has a new Q3 discount policy that doesn't exist. It didn't become sentient, it just pulled the wrong data. Azure AI Studio and Azure AI Foundry both lean on this pattern, and they support all types of modalities, language, vision, speech, even video retrieval. But the catch is, RAG is only as good as its data. Here's the kicker most teams miss. You can't just plug in one retrieval method and call it good. If you want results to hold together, you need hybrid keyword plus vector search, topped off with a semantic re-ranker that's built into Azure AI Search. It lets the system balance literal keyword hits with semantic meaning, then reorder results so the right context sits on top. When you chain that into your multimodal setup, suddenly the model can survive crooked scans and fuzzy images instead of hallucinating your compliance policy out of thin air. Now, let's talk about why so many rollouts fall flat. Enterprises expect polished results on day one, but they don't budget for evaluation loops. Without checks for groundedness, relevance, and coherence running in the background, you don't notice drift until users are already burned. Many early deployments fail fast for exactly this reason. The output sounds correct, but nobody verified it against source truth. Think about it. You'd never deploy a new database without monitoring. Yet with multimodal AI, executives toss it into production as if it's a plug-and-play magic box. It doesn't have to end in failure. Carvana is one of the Foundry customer stories that proves this point. They made self-service AI actually useful by tuning retrieval, grounding their agents properly, and investing in observability. That turned what could have been another toy bot into something customers could trust. Now flip that to the companies that stapled a generic chatbot onto their support page without grounding or evaluation. You've seen the result. Warranty claims misfiled as sales leads, support queues bloated, and credibility shredded. Same as your stack, opposite outcome. So here's the blunt bottom line. Multimodal doesn't collapse because the AI isn't smart enough. It collapses because the data isn't prepared, indexed, or monitored. Feed junk into the retrieval system, skip evaluations, and watch trust burn. But with hybrid search, semantic re-ranking, and constant evaluator runs, you can process invoices, contracts, pictures, even rough audio notes with answers that still land in reality instead of fantasy. And once grounding is in order, another risk comes into view. Because even if the data pipelines are clean, the system driving them can still spin out. That's where the question shifts. Is the agent coordinating all of this actually helping your business, or is it just quietly turning your IT budget into bonfire fuel? Helpful agent or expensive paperweight? An agent coordinates models, data, triggers, and actions. Think of it as a traffic cop for your automated workflows. Sometimes it directs everything smoothly, sometimes it waves in 3 dump trucks and a clown car, then walks off for lunch. That gap between the clean definition and the messy reality is where most teams skid out. On paper, an agent looks golden. Feed it instructions, point it at your data and apps, and it should run processes, fetch answers, and even kick off workflows. But this isn't a perfect coworker. It's just as likely to fix a recurring issue at 2 a.m. as it is to flood your queue with 100 phantom tickets because it misread an error log. Picture it inside ServiceNow. When scoped tightly, the AI spins up real tickets only for genuine problems and buys humans back hours. Left loose, it can bury the help desk in a wall of bogus alerts about critical printer failures on hardware that's fine. Try explaining that productivity boost to your CIO. Here's the distinction many miss. Copilots and agents are not the same. A copilot is basically a prompt buddy. You ask, it answers, and you stay in control. Agents, on the other hand, decide things without waiting on you. They follow your vague instructions to the letter, even when the results make no sense. That's when the automation either saves real time or trips into chaos you'll spend twice as long cleaning up. The truth is, a lot of teams hand their agent a job description that reads like a campaign promise. Optimize processes, provide insights, help people. Congratulations, you've basically told the bot to run wild. Agents without scope don't politely stay in their lane. They thrash, they invent problems to fix, they duplicate records, they loop endlessly, and then leadership wonders why a glossy demo turned into production pain. Now let's set the record straight. It's not that most orgs fail in the first 2 months. That's not in the research. What does happen, and fast, is that many orgs hit roadblocks early because they never scoped their agents tightly, never added validation steps, and never instrumented telemetry. Without those guardrails, your shiny new tool is just a reckless intern with admin rights. And here's where the Microsoft stack actually gives you the pieces. Copilot Studio is the low-code spot where makers design agent behavior, think flows, prompts, event triggers. Then Azure AI Foundry's agent service is the enterprise scaffolding that puts those agents into production with observability. Agent service is where you add monitoring, logs, metrics. It's deliberately scoped for automation with human oversight baked in because Microsoft knows what happens if you trust an untested agent in the wild. So how do you know if your agent is actually useful? Run it through a blunt litmus checklist. 1. Does it reduce human hours or does it pull your staff into debugging chores? 2. Are you capturing metrics like groundedness, fluency, and coherence, or are you just staring at the pretty marketing dashboards? 3. Do you have telemetry in place so you can catch drift before users start filing complaints? If you answered wrong on any of those, you don't have an intelligent agent. You've got an expensive screensaver. The way out is using Azure AI Foundry's observability features and built-in evaluators. These aren't optional extras. They're the documented way to measure groundedness, relevance, coherence, and truth to source. Without them, you're guessing whether your agent is smart or just making things up in a polite tone of voice. With them, you can step in confidently and fine-tune when output deviates. So yes, agents can be game changers. Scoped wrong, they become chaos amplifiers that drain more time than they save. Scoped right, with clear job boundaries, real telemetry, and grounded answers, they can handle tasks while humans focus on the higher value work. And just when you think you've got that balance right, the story shifts again. Microsoft is already pushing autonomous agents, bots that don't wait for you before acting, which takes the stakes from helpful or paperweight into a whole different category, because now we're talking about systems that run even when no one's watching. The autonomous agent trap. Autonomous agents are where the hype turns dangerous. On paper, they're the dream. Let the AI act for you, automate the grind, and stop dragging yourself out of bed at 2 a.m. to nurse ticket queues. Sounds great in the boardroom. The trap is simple. They don't wait for permission. Copilots pause for you. Autonomous agents don't, and when they make a bad call, the damage lands instantly and scales across your tenant. The concept is easy enough. Copilots are reactive, agents are proactive. Instead of sitting quietly until someone types a prompt, you scope agents to watch service health, handle security signals, or run workflows automatically. Microsoft pitches that as efficiency, less human waste, faster detection, smoother operations. The promise is real, but here's the important context. Autonomous agents in Copilot Studio today are still in preview. Preview doesn't mean broken, but it does mean untested in the messy real world. And even Microsoft says you need lifecycle governance, guardrails, and the Copilot control system in place before you think about rolling them wide. Consider a realistic risk. Say you build an autonomous help desk agent and give it authority to respond to login anomalies. In a demo with 5 users, it works perfectly. Alerts raised, accounts managed. Then noisy inputs hit in production. Instead of waiting, it starts mass resetting hundreds of accounts based on false positives. The result isn't a hypothetical outage. It could realistically take down month-end operations. That's not science fiction. It's the failure mode you sign up for if you skip scoping. The fix isn't ditching the tech, it's building the safety net first. So what's the survival checklist? 3 must-dos come before any flashy automation. 1. Identity and access scoping. Give your agent minimal rights, no blanket admin roles. 2. Logging and rollback. Every action must leave a trail you can audit, and every serious action needs a reversal path when the agent misfires. 3. Content and behavior filters. Microsoft calls this out with Azure AI Content Safety and Knowledge Configuration, the filters that keep an eager bot from generating inappropriate answers or marching off script. Do these first, or your agent's cleverness will bury your ops team rather than help it. The ethics layer makes this even sharper. Picture an HR agent automatically flagging employees as risky or a finance agent holding back supplier payments it misclassifies as fraud. These aren't harmless quirks, they are human impact failures with legal and compliance fallout. Bias in training data or retrieval doesn't vanish just because you're now running in enterprise preview. Without filters, checks, and human fallbacks, your outsourcing judgment calls your lawyers definitely don't want made by an unsupervised algorithm. Microsoft's own messaging at Ignite was blunt on this. Guardrails, lifecycle management, monitoring, and the Copilot control system aren't nice-to-haves, they're required. Preview today is less about shiny demos and more about testers proving where the cracks show up. If you go live without stage testing, approval workflows, and audits, you're not running an agent, you're stress testing your tenant in production. That's why observability isn't optional. You need dashboards that show every step an agent takes and evaluators that check if its output was grounded, relevant, and coherent with your policy. And you need human-in-the-loop options. Microsoft doesn't hide this. They reference patterns where the human remains the fail-safe. Think of it like flight autopilot, incredibly useful, but always designed with a manual override. If the bot believes the optimal landing is in a lake, you want to grab control before splashdown. The right analogy here is letting a teenager learn to drive. The potential is real, the speed's impressive, but you don't hand over the keys, leave the driveway, and hope for the best. You sit passenger side, you give them boundaries, and you install brakes you can hit yourself. That's lifecycle governance in practice, training wheels until you're sure the system won't steer off the road. And this brings us to the bigger factory floor where agents, copilots, and every workflow you've tested come together. Microsoft calls that Azure AI Foundry, a one-stop AI build space with all the tools. Whether it becomes the production powerhouse or the place your projects self-combust depends entirely on how you treat it. Azure AI Foundry, your factory or your minefield. Azure AI Foundry is Microsoft's new flagship pitch, a so-called factory for everything AI. The problem? Too many teams walk in and treat it like IKEA. They wander through dazzled by the catalogs, grab a couple shiny large language models, toss in some connectors, and then bolt something together without instructions. What they end up with isn't an enterprise AI system. It's a demo-grade toy that topples the first time a real user drops in a messy PDF. Here's what Foundry actually offers, straight from the official playbook. A model catalog spanning Microsoft, OpenAI, Meta, Mistral, DeepSeek, and others. Customization options like Retrieval Augmented Generation, fine-tuning, and distillation. An agent service for orchestration. Tools like prompt flow for evaluation and debugging. Security baseline features, identity and access controls, content safety filters, and observability dashboards. In short, it's all the parts you need to build copilots, agents, autonomous flows, and keep them compliant. That's the inventory. The issue isn't that the toolbox is empty, it's that too many admins treat it like flipping a GPT-4 turbo switch and calling it production ready. The truth is, Foundry is a factory floor, not your hackathon toy box. That means setting identity boundaries so only the right people touch the right models. It means wrapping content safety around every pipeline. It means using observability so you know when an answer is grounded versus when it's the model inventing company policy out of thin air. And it means matching the job with the right model instead of just pick the biggest one because it sounds smart. Skip those steps and chaos walks in through the side door. I've seen a team wire a Foundry Copilot on SharePoint that happily exposed restricted HR data to 20 interns. It wasn't clever. It was a compliance disaster that could have been avoided with built-in access rules. Let's talk real failure modes. An org once ran GPT-4 Turbo for product photo tagging. In the lab, it crushed the demo. Clean studio photos, perfect tags, everyone clapped. In production, the inputs weren't glossy JPEGs, they were blurry warehouse phone pics. Suddenly, the AI mistagged strollers as office chairs and scrambled UPC labels into fake serial numbers. On top of the trust hit, the costs started ticking up. And this isn't a 0.01 per message fairy tale. Foundry pricing is consumption-based and tied to the specific services you use. Every connector, every retrieval call, every message meter is billed against your tenant. Each piece has its own billing model. That flexibility is nice, but if you don't estimate with the Azure pricing calculator and track usage, your finance team is going to be delighted with your surprise invoice. That's the billing trap. Consumption pricing works if you plan, monitor, and optimize. If you don't, it looks a lot like running a sports car as a pizza scooter, expensive, noisy, and pointless. We've all been there with things like Power BI, great demo, runaway bill. Don't let Foundry land you in the same spot. Developers love prototyping in Foundry because the sandbox feels slick. And in a sandbox, it is slick, clean demo data, zero mess, instant wow. But here's the killer. Teams push that prototype into production without evaluation pipelines. If you skip evaluators for groundedness, fluency, relevance, and coherence, you're deploying blind. And what happens? Users see the drift in output, confidence drops, execs cut funding. This isn't Foundry failing. It's teams failing governance. Many Foundry prototypes stall before production for this exact reason. No observability, no quality checks, no telemetry. The answer is right there in the platform. Use Azure AI Foundry Observability from day one. Wire in prompt flows. Run built-in evaluators on every test. Ground your system with Azure AI Search using hybrid search plus semantic re-ranking before you even think about going live. Microsoft didn't bury these tools in an annex. They're documented for production safety. But too often, builders sift past them like footnotes. That checkpoint mentality is how you keep out of the minefield. Treat Foundry as a factory, governance as step one, compliance policies baked in like conditional access, observability pipelines humming from the start. And yes, identity scoping and content safety shouldn't be bolted on later. They're in the bill of materials. Skip governance and you risk more than bad answers. Without it, your multimodal bot might happily expose HR salaries to external users or label invoices with fictional policy numbers. That's not just broken AI, that's headline bait your compliance office doesn't want to explain. And that's where the spotlight shifts. Because the next stumbling block isn't technical at all. It's whether your AI is responsible. Everyone loves to throw those words into a keynote slide. But in practice, it's about audits, filters, compliance, and the mountain of choices you make before launch. And that's where the headaches truly begin. Subscribe to the M365.show newsletter for the blunt fixes and follow us on the M365 Show LinkedIn page for live streams with MVPs who've tested Foundry in production and seen what goes wrong. Responsible AI or responsible headaches? Everyone loves to drop responsible AI into a keynote. It looks sharp next to buzzwords like fairness and transparency. But in the trenches, it's not an inspiring philosophy. It's configuration, audits, filters, and governance steps that feel more like server maintenance than innovation. Responsible AI is the seatbelt, not the sports car. Skip it once and the crash comes fast. Microsoft talks about ethics and security up front, but for admins rolling this live, it translates to practical guardrails. You need access policies that don't fold under pressure, filters that actually block harmful prompts, and logs detailed enough to satisfy a regulator with caffeine and a subpoena. It's not glamorous work. It's isolating HR copilots from finance data, setting scoping rules so Teams bots don't creep into SharePoint secrets, and tagging logs so you can prove exactly how a response was formed. Do that right, and responsible isn't a corporate slogan, it's survival. The ugly version of skipping this, plugging a bot straight into your HR repository without tenant scoping. A user asks about insurance benefits. The bot helpfully publishes employee salary bands into chat. Now you've got a privacy breach, a morale nightmare, and possibly regulators breathing down your neck. The fastest way to kill adoption isn't bad UX, it's one sensitive data leak. So what keeps that mess out? Start with Azure AI Content Safety. It's built to filter out violent, obscene, and offensive prompts and responses before they leak back to users. But that's baseline hygiene. Foundry and Copilot Studio stack on evaluation pipelines that handle the next layer. Groundedness checks, relevance scoring, transparency dashboards, and explainability. In English, you can adjust thresholds, filter both inputs and outputs, and make bots show their work. Without those, you're just rolling dice on what the AI spits out. And here's the resourcing reality. Microsoft puts weight behind this. 34,000 full-time equivalent engineers dedicated to security, plus 15,000 partners with deep security expertise. That's a fortress. But don't get comfortable. None of those engineers are inside your tenant making your access rules. Microsoft hands you the guardrails, but it's still your job to lock down identities, set data isolation, apply encryption, and configure policies. If your scoping is sloppy, you'll still own the breach. The real fix is lifecycle governance. Think of it as the recipe Microsoft itself recommends. Test, approve, release, audit, iterate. With checkpoints at every cycle, you keep spotting drift before it becomes headline bait. Teams that ship once and walk away always blow up. Models evolve, prompts shift, and outputs wander. Governance isn't red tape. It's how you stop an intern bot from inventing policies in Teams while everyone's asleep. Some admins grumble that responsible just means slower. A wrong lens? Responsible doesn't kill velocity, it keeps velocity from killing you. Good governance means you can actually survive audits and still keep projects moving. Skip it and you're cliff diving. Speed without controls only gets you one kind of record. Shortest time to post-mortem. Think of driving mountain switchbacks. You don't curse the guardrails, you thank them when the road drops 200 feet. Responsible AI is the same. Scopes, policies, filters, logs, they don't stop your speed, they keep your car off the evening news. Bottom line, Microsoft has given you serious muscle. Content safety, evaluation pipelines, security frameworks, SDK guardrails. But it's still your job to scope tenants, configure access, and wire those loops into your production cycle. Do that, and you've got AI that survives compliance instead of collapsing under it. Ignore it, and it's not just an outage risk, it's careers on the line. Responsible AI isn't slow. Responsible AI is survivable. And survivability is the real test. Because what comes next isn't about features. It's about whether you treat this platform like plug and play or respect it as governance-first infrastructure. That distinction decides who lasts and who burns out. Here's the bottom line. The trap isn't Foundry or Copilot Studio, it's thinking they're plug and play. The memory hook is simple: governance first, experiment second, production last. Skip identity and observability at your peril. The tools are there, but only governance turns prototypes into real production. So, if you want the blunt fixes that actually keep your tenant alive, subscribe to the podcast and leave me a review. I put daily hours into this, and your support really helps. Tools will shift, survival tactics survive.